Hey everyone, I'm Lexi Webster from Avero Advisors. I'm the proposal coordinator and I work with Megan in the business development department. She is giving me the honor of hosting the live today, so she has gave her baby off to me. Um, so just a little bit about us. We do IT strategic planning, ERP consulting, and AI consulting. We are your trusted advisor in the public sector. We only have public sector clients and we want it to be that way. A little bit about me. I have a background in public policy and administration from the University of Tennessee. And then after that, I worked as a project administrator at a development district in Tennessee. And then I came to Avero about a year and a half ago as their proposal coordinator. So, Megan, would you like to introduce yourself real quick?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year again. It's so good to be in year 2025 with so much momentum and so much excitement. So super excited to be here today. Lexi, that was a great intro. Guys, show Lexi some love. This is her first time hosting a live, so we need to cheer her on today. So in the comments, make sure you show Lexi some love today. But yes, I'm Megan Seaton. I am the Vice President of Strategic Growth here at Avero. I've been with Avero for 3 years now, a little over 3. And my background actually is in finance. So I grew up in the corporate world at a local bank here in town. Started out as a teller and worked my way up through private client banker, where I held a Series 7 and 63. And I also spent a little bit of time in the trust department. So really, I have a love for people and understanding what their pain points are and how I can help them along their journey. So that is really where my passion lies. And I'm excited to be here with you all today and talk about RFP Masterclass, right? I know that Lexi and I, we're very, sometimes maybe dramatic. Sometimes we get a little upset about procurement policies, but we understand that our procurement professionals keep us out of jail, right? There are laws in place for a reason, and we understand that there are certain things that you have to do, like make us mail in proposals, because that is a part of your policy. So today it's going to be a little different. We have a PowerPoint presentation prepared for you all, and then we're going to show you some examples today of a good RFP versus a bad RFP, and then show you just a little tidbit. We have a checklist to show you because when we respond to RFPs and you're requiring us to, to turn in 1,000 forms and this and that, it's good for us to have a checklist that we know that we're meeting all of your criteria in your RFP. Yeah. So that was a long-winded introduce yourself.
No, you're good.
Continue. What are you most excited about for this session?
Yeah, so I think this session, Megan and I have done lots of sessions on RFPs, but this one is actually going to be really interactive. And instead of just hearing us talk about what we like or dislike in proposals, you're actually going to get to see it, which will be really nice. And, really let you know, this is what you should do. This is what you shouldn't do. And it's going to be very interactive and give you a lot of skills to run with if you're working on crafting an RFP.
Yep, absolutely. And again, if you're joining us today, make sure you show Lexi some love. I do want to point your attention to our 2025 report in the left-hand corner. Please scan that QR code and download our 2025 report. All the things that we talk about related to digital transformation in the public sector is in writing in that report. And it's not a report that we wrote, at the end of last year and we don't touch it again. We are constantly updating that information because it is our job to be a trusted advisor in this space. There's so much noise when you talk about, AI and ERP transformations and IT strategic planning. There's a lot of noise out there. And what we want to do is help you cut through that noise. So make sure you download that 2025 report and make sure you follow us on all social media platforms and continue to join us on our live streams every Wednesday at 10. Unless there's some kind of craziness going on. But we do go live every week and we love to see your faces and we love it when you guys interact with us. So ask us any question. Any question. All right, so I am going to be the navigator of the screens today. So you guys bear with me, please, because this is new for me. So if something, weird happens, just bear with me. We'll figure it out. But
Yep.
Lexi and I did a quick run through before we push the go live button. But just bear with us today.
It's a new thing for us.
That's right. That's right. All right, so I'm going to share my screen for the PowerPoint presentation that we put together. So hopefully it works.
Yep.
All right.
That worked.
So let's just describe what this PowerPoint entails.
Yes. So this PowerPoint we actually made for a panel we were on about how to get better RFP responses. And this is just calling out some challenges that we face and kind of gives you some, I would say, red flags to think about when you're making an RFP. What to avoid, what to look out for. These are challenges that vendors face with RFPs a lot. And, if you have lots of challenges in your RFP, you're not going to get tons of responses. The responses you do get may not be what you're looking for because people just had to take a shot in the dark. And also, the more detailed you are, the better responses you're going to get. So, go.
No, sorry, Lex. I didn't mean to cut you off. You're doing a great job, by the way. One of the things, we talk about a vague scope of work, but what we realize about our clients, again, are the challenges that you guys face in trying to come up with a scope of work that makes sense to us, because there is so much talk out in the market. And so before you even craft an RFP, I would say do your research. RFPs are public knowledge. You should be able to Google, scopes of work and pick and choose, use those as an example of maybe defining what you're looking for in your organization, right? Our job, again, is to help you cut through that noise. So if you have no clue on where to begin, talk to us, small sales plug there.
Hit us up. We will help you.
And two, you need to decide. Our advice when you're thinking about any digital transformation project is to get all of your key stakeholders in a room together. Oftentimes, Lex, we see that one department may be owning this, project, and typically it's IT. Now, I have my feelings about that because, IT very much needs to be involved, right? From
definitely.
Standpoint. But IT does not need to be crafting every aspect of your scope of work because IT may not understand your day-to-day operations and how you do business. So I know we're talking about vague scopes of work, but the advice I would give to you all is to make sure that all of your key stakeholders in your organization are in a room together, crafting the scope together.
Definitely. Yeah, I could not agree with that more. Because like you said, the vague scope of work a lot of times has to do when, only one person or one department of, 3-4 people has said, this is what we want. But we're not getting the broader picture. Sometimes we've responded to RFPs and other departments are like, we have no clue what you're even talking about. Right. We didn't even know this RFP was on the street, and it comes from them internally. So, there just needs to be coordination on the front end. Megan and I have talked about this before, doing like executive meetings about the RFP and what you're looking for from this project and defining your outcomes, because you're not going to get the responses you want and the RFP you want if you've not done that work with the key stakeholders. And that includes with more than, one department.
That's right. And, IT knows what they need from their perspective, but what does procurement need? What does finance need? What does maintenance in your asset management? What does everyone need? What do you want the outcomes to be? Because whether you like it or not, a new system is going to affect everyone, every single department, and not just we're talking ERP, but even in technology strategic planning, that's dispersed out through the entire organization. It's not just a review of the technology department. So having everyone involved and making a wish list, and then, redefining that wish list to what's truly needed for the entire organization is key. And it shouldn't just come from one department.
Correct.
Sorry, we're getting passionate
Yeah,
about
we have some
vague
we have some good questions in the
We
chat.
do. Let's take
Yeah.
them. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I like Kyler's first one. How do you balance a vague scope when you're not exactly sure what you need without alienating anyone in the process? And we see this a lot.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of times our clients don't know what they don't know. We say that all the time. And that's not a negative thing by any means. It's just, you know, there's so much noise in the space that they can't tell what they truly need. And even if they try to have these stakeholder meetings, you know, everybody still may have different opinions on which direction they need to go. So we like to say, you know, talk to us early, or even, I mean, we had a case where we were invited for a shortlist presentation. And this client, you know, it turned into more of a conversation because we said, you know, your RFP was a little confusing. What is your actual project here? What are you looking for? And that turned into a conversation, and we've actually got to work with them on multiple different engagements now. So, you know, I would say if you're not clear on what you need also, and you end up still going out to RFP, and it's very broad and a vague scope of work, like really engage with each of the respondents and see, you know, do they offer broad enough services to help you on a broad number of things where it can be a one-off engagement and then you move on to the next one. So that's hard because everyone does always have different opinions a lot of times on what the priorities need to be.
Yeah.
But also I would say if you are putting something out there with a vague scope of work, you could even do something like a request for qualifications instead of a request for proposal. Get qualifications from firms and then have them on a list that you will utilize when certain projects come up. There are other ways, you know, if you don't know your scope of work, there are ways around that where you can still go out to RFP and get a list together and utilize those people.
Yeah, absolutely. I love all of that. And I do think it goes back to who is owning the vision for your organization, right? And what is that vision? If you're planning for 2025 or budgeting, you know, thinking about your budget for 2026, what is that vision and what does it look like? And so then when everybody gets in a room, you all know like, hey, we're doing this for the betterment of our organization as a whole. And each of these requirements and our conversations today all roll up into that vision, right? This is what we're trying to achieve. And so that's where we need to get back to. Alienating anyone, I think just, we've talked about this before, just making sure everyone's ideas and thoughts are heard. You know, and that's not always easy in any organization, right? People are passionate about what they're passionate about, and sometimes it's hard to get anything done. So I think, like Lexi said, leaning on us, we can come in early in the process and help mediate a little bit, but also doing your research on the front end. Lexi, talk a little bit about RFIs and RFQs. You know, we responded to an RFI, I believe, for a deal early last year that really they just wanted to know what we thought about their scope of work.
Yes.
Right. Yes. They said, what are your thoughts on the scope? Did we leave anything out? Did we, you know, give us your thoughts on this scope. And we responded to it. And then based on all of that feedback that they got, they then issued an RFP, which made it easy for us to respond to. So speak a little bit on RFIs and RFQs.
Yeah, RFIs are a great way when you're not exactly sure what you need, or you think you know what you need, but you just want to make sure you're hitting all your bases. Put out a request for information. Like that entity did, they said, this is our current scope of work. Are we missing anything? You know, are we leaving anything out? Are there some steps to this process we're not thinking of? You know, that's a great way to kind of get the vendor community involved early and get their thoughts on what you're leaving out. And it's a way to develop those relationships early as well. And to learn who these advisors are and get information about them. So that is great. And also similar with the request for qualifications that I talked about. At that point, you don't know what your projects are, but when projects do arise, because they always do, you will have an available list of people to pull from. You know, we've won lots of RFQs. Sometimes they're used, sometimes they're not. it's very frustrating when, we get awarded an RFQ and a project never comes from it. And it's not because we're not winning those follow-on projects. They just simply aren't utilizing the contract.
Right.
They never put out projects for you to give a specific price quote on or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say if you're going to go the RFQ route, utilize the list. It makes it easier for you. You've got a standby list of people that's good for 3 to 5 years. And then you're not having to go out to full RFP again for every single project that pops up. You have a ready list to use. So I would just say, utilize that. It's a smart thing to do, and you're not having to go through the RFP process every single time.
Yeah, absolutely. And back to doing your research on the front end, I know that we personally put out tons of case studies on our websites. We do tons of white papers on just projects and how they're going and what went well versus what didn't, and some of the challenges. And some of the challenges are very unique to the organization. But reading through case studies, I think, will help you with this scope of work. Also, I know you guys are going to conferences because we meet you all at conferences. So don't be afraid to ask us, hey, what do you think about this? How would you position this scope? And not only us, talk to your other vendors as well, your software vendors, your consultants, get information. We're not there to bug you to death. We really do want to advise you on the best way forward. And we want you guys to be able to get very clear and good responses.
Yes.
So do your research. All right, let's talk about some of these. Let's talk about the challenge, right? And some of the things we put on the slide. We've covered most of it, but I know we've went down a rabbit hole, but
so I guess challenge 1, as we've said, vague scope of work. The organization doesn't know what they truly need, or sometimes they know, they just don't do a great job of explaining it in their RFP. Lack of context, why this project, why now? There's no background. There can be a significant thing that, a cybersecurity failure, something that has prompted this project, but without telling us that, then we're at a disadvantage. We don't know why this project is happening.
We're guessing.
We're guessing. Yep. And I would also say, you need to have your outcomes defined. That's the point of these meetings we're talking about prior to issuing an RFP. Define what you want to get out of this project. Because if you don't even know what you want to get out of this project, again, we are just guessing. We can tell you some outcomes that would be expected, but it's better when we know what you're expecting from the project and we're not.
Can you give us an example, or can you think of an example of what an outcome would be in an RFP?
Yeah, so an outcome in an RFP, to me, I have saw when they've listed multiple outcomes before, say they're going out to RFP for ERP consulting services. An outcome may be having an up-to-date ERP system that makes their jobs a lot easier, that they're not having to use all these shadow systems and Excel documents and everything, that maybe they have 2 more hours in their day to allot to more important tasks in their job. They're not having to do mundane activities.
Yeah, Lex, I think that's great. And I think it could be as simple as, hey, it takes us 4 weeks to process an invoice. And that's because we're physically walking paper from department to department for approval.
Yeah.
And so we want to take that 4 weeks and get it approved in a day. That tells me a lot right there, right?
Yeah, definitely.
that tells me we need to look at that process and who all's involved and how we can shorten it and maybe map it out and see where the inefficiencies are, right?
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, you're very paper-based. If you put that in an RFP, I know that you're very paper-based and we need to move to more digitized outcomes, right? I mean, that alone tells me a lot. Anyway, thank you, Lex. I know we have one more bullet point.
So the resulting issue is that you will have misaligned proposals that don't address your actual requirements or the outcomes you're wanting from the project. And again, a lot of people responding to RFPs, especially us, we do our research. We try to figure out, what you're looking for, why this project's happening, what your outcomes want to be. But there are times we cannot really find that information. And the RFP doesn't really explain that. So, sometimes we are just putting our best foot forward and guessing what you want. So you really need to make sure your RFP is clear and straightforward. because if not, your proposals aren't going to align with what you think you're asking for.
Yep. And when we say missing background about the entity, what we're looking for in there is, hey, have you had a lot of turnover? What systems are you using?
Currently,
How long have you been on that system?
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with the system?
Yeah.
Is your system sunsetting?
Mm-hmm.
What else? What else am I leaving out?
Yeah, I think the current systems is a big one. I love when they tell us that, because that lets us know, oh, wow, this software is 40 years old. Of course they need something new, things like that. High turnover, or we've never had an IT strategic plan, and our IT department really doesn't have a direction to go in. Those are the kind of details we're really wanting.
Or you already said this one, or we've had a cyber attack and we really just don't know what to do next.
Yeah, we need to have a plan in place. Yeah,
we do. There is a question in the comments, and then I promise we're going to move on to slide number 2. But Kyler says, could you talk about how crucial independent advisors are in crafting an RFP? Biases can be a significant issue, often skewing their responses. Whew, Kyler, you're going to have to be coming at me. But yes, independence is huge.
Yes.
Especially when crafting an RFP. So 2 things here. Lexi and I respond to over 100, and I think the number was 134 this past year RFPs, but we also help our clients craft RFPs to procure software, right? And so if you are using a consultant that is tied to a software vendor, even when they say they're not tied to a software vendor, if you have one that is strongly suggesting a vendor or are in cahoots with a vendor, guess what your RFP is going to be? It's going to be catered to that vendor.
Yeah.
So do you really know if that system is going to work for you? If your requirements are catered to that vendor that they're in cahoots with? Anyway, Lexi, you might want to take the rest of this, because we see this a lot in the market.
We do. Yep.
A lot. And
we
it's
also
very clear.
Yeah, we also see when a software vendor itself says, we can come in and look at your requirements and then tailor our, software to what you need. Of course, they're going to make it to exactly what they can do. Why would they tell you, oh, we can't do that? You need to go find someone else. It's just, you really need someone who is not connected and wants what is best for your entity, depending on your requirements. I tell people all the time, we are independent. Yes, we have relationships with vendors because it's in our favor and our clients' favor to know what's out on the market and know what they can offer and all that. But just because we recommended a certain software for one client doesn't mean we're going to recommend it for another. Each of our clients is unique and has different needs, and we will recommend what is best for them.
Well, long story short, we advocate for the client, not for the vendor. And I love my vendor partners. As Lexi mentioned, it's in our best interest to know what's out there so that we can advise you on and help you break through the noise, right? Yeah. But you need an unbiased opinion. You don't need someone who's going to be biased, and you don't need, your current vendor coming in and crafting requirements for a new system because they're just going to put you into their newest product.
Exactly.
So if you really want to do this right and you really want to make change in your organization, make sure that you're looking at it from a holistic view and from an unbiased perspective. So Kyler's louder for those in the back. So this is something we're very passionate about because we're seeing it more and more. And even, I might get in trouble for saying this, but open your eyes at conferences. Look at who, some people are right next to each other, and just pay attention to what's going on in the marketplace. I don't want to talk about booth location. That's not what I mean. I mean, just look at how these vendors and consultants are interacting with each other and where they show up. So anyway, sorry, I'll move on because I might say something I don't need to. Let's move on to number 2. Sorry,
I'm in challenge 2.
Maybe. Can y'all see challenge number 2?
There we go. Okay. Yeah. So inadequate response time. This is super important. Although Avero and I consider ourselves a very nimble agency that we can typically respond to stuff pretty quickly. That falls in my lap. People do need time to respond. I like to say for our services, we at least need a 2-week turnaround from when an RFP is issued to the deadline. And I search for RFPs like weekly. So unless something just pops up prior to Friday, you may issue it on a Monday and I'm not seeing it till 4 days later on Friday, a lot of times, which has already shortened our timeline. So I like to say for our services, 2 to 4 weeks. Clearly the more time, the better. I'm a proactive person, and I view the RFP process proactively. We're not going to wait till the last minute. Like we've talked about before, there is no back burner. We are going to work on it as soon as possible. And this first bullet point, that an inadequate response time can showcase that there is a perception of bias, because I saw this more than once, and it's pretty shocking actually, where an entity puts an RFP out on a Wednesday, responses are due 2 days later on Friday. That is absolutely crazy to me, and that tells me that they know who they wanted. Nobody is going to be able to throw a response together in 2 days, or if they do, it's not going to be great.
And that defeats the whole purpose of an RFP, right? So this is a competitive bidding process. Yep. So if you already know who you're going to go with and you still issue an RFP just to check a box and then, 2 days, that's not really fair in my opinion.
Yeah. Agreed.
There are other ways you can go about, contracting that entity. But anyway, that's a topic of conversation for another day. But, as Lexi mentioned, we have a very rigorous process that these responses go through. Mm-hmm. And we need at least 2 weeks for the RFP to go through that process. It goes through several layers of QA. And we want to make sure that we're crafting a genuine and thorough response for your unique organization. Mm-hmm. So we also need time to do research on that. If it's not laid out in the RFP document, we need to do research on where you've been, where you want to go. And also, try to uncover if we have any relationships that know more about your organization, right? Yeah. And lean on our vendor partners in seeing if they know anything, right?
Yes.
So there's a lot of time and thought put into our responses. We do have things in place that make it a little bit quicker, like we have built out templates, but that doesn't mean that we copy and paste everything.
Yeah.
Which Kyler may ask, I'm going to go ahead and ask this. But, with the use of AI and RFP responses, I'm a little worried that people are just going to start relying on AI and when you guys are reviewing responses, you're going to have these AI written responses and everyone's response is going to be the same.
Going to look the same. Yeah.
Do you have advice for what's about to come with AI, or has the potential?
Yeah. And I would say in that particular case you're mentioning, Megan, if all your responses look the same, that you can kind of tell this is probably written by AI. It's pretty much the same across the board with the vendors. I think you need to bring all of them in and, do shortlists with them, get to know them. Because if you're just picking a vendor based on, they have more clients in our area, might as well do that. Just because they have more clients in a certain area doesn't mean they're the best pick for you. So I think we're going to see a lot more go to the shortlist stage. And possibly, it may not just be the top 3. It may be everyone, going for an interview. To really see how you stand out compared to others.
Yeah. And maybe just when you're sifting through your responses, as Lexi mentioned, you should be able to tell if it's AI written or not. And so really look at those organizations who are trying to set themselves apart from anybody else. I think that's what we're really good at, is we try to put things in our RFP responses that allow us to stand out from the competition. Because really the reality is we all do the same thing, right? We all do the same thing. Our approach sometimes can seem very similar, but boils down to, who do you want to work with
Yeah.
for the next 3 years? Who do you want in your offices for an extended period of time? Who's going to be your trusted advisor?
Yeah,
Not only
definitely.
your trusted advisor, who's going to be your friend through
Mhm.
this? Who's going to listen when you need to be talked off
Yeah.
the ledge? So
Yeah.
I do agree, Lexi. I think it is going to come down to more shortlist interviews.
Mhm.
Or maybe, you interview, I don't know how this would work, but maybe you would interview your respondents beforehand and then say,
Before they respond.
give me
Yeah.
your methodology, right?
Yeah.
But things are going to have to change with
Mhm.
the use of AI.
Yeah, definitely.
Tyler says, I can't type fast enough. I'm sorry. What she asked, hold on, are there specific compliance timelines for RFP in the public sector? Maybe.
Yeah, I think it depends on the
Yeah.
organization. Each organization has different requirements. I feel like, this is just kind of overall, this doesn't mean for every place, but I feel like more of the traditional government types like cities and counties and states probably have more regimented timelines, and more quasi-governmental agencies such as housing authorities, water districts, etc. They a lot of times have their own rules unique to the entity.
Yeah.
And they're not having to follow, states rules, things like that. Some entities don't even have to go out to RFP for purchases under a certain amount. They just get 3 quotes from
Yep.
three different vendors. So it kind of depends. But a lot of times there are requirements in place. But I would say it depends across the board.
But policies can be changed.
Yes.
So how do we advocate for change, in the procurement field? I
Yeah.
don't know, guys. I didn't come up in the procurement department. I just know based on what we read sometimes, I'm like, well, why can't this one policy that says we have to mail everything in, why can't that change?
Yeah.
Because that there's just more efficient ways for you guys to read through procurement responses besides getting them in the mail in hopes that it gets there in time and that it goes to the right department. There's just so much clunkiness with that. So I'm constantly asking myself, what does it take to look at our policies and make some changes so that it protects your organization and how you move forward on any project?
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. I
Anyway,
cannot agree more.
sorry, I'm preaching. Did we go over everything? Short deadlines.
I think the last 2 bullet points, keep in mind your respondents also are managing multiple proposals all at once. They're not just focused on yours. Typically, we have anywhere from 15 to 20 in the hopper that we're working on all at once, So that's something to keep in mind. They have competing priorities just like the procurement department does. And then the resulting impact of these inadequate response times are that you will get lower quality submissions and you may not get as much participation. If you keep your RFP on the street for a month, you may have more people respond than, a week or 2 turnaround.
Right.
And when we were doing this presentation previously to a purchasing association, somebody said, I found if I keep it out for a month, people end up forgetting about it. That it's not quick enough, not a priority. They end up forgetting about it. I would say that will never happen from us on our point of view. Definitely.
That was another moment where I got really passionate on a panel discussion.
Yes.
That will not happen. I always think about what our fearless leader, AV, would say if we just forgot about something.
Yes, exactly. For us, the more time, the better. That allows us to do more research and make a better proposal. So, you want to have an adequate response time so that you're making sure you give people enough time to respond and you're not just getting a templated proposal that they had to throw together quickly.
Right.
And you're getting a tailored response.
It's vendor specific too, or project specific, right? I mean, if you are trying to procure for a new road or for gravel or whatever, my significant other works in the aggregates industry. And so I could see him forgetting about something if it's a month out, if it's just because typically they just have to turn in pricing,
Quick.
right?
Yeah.
And it's on a one-page form and they just, submit it to procurement. There's not a whole lot going on there. So I could see that turnaround time being a little bit shorter than an ERP project. So I do think it is project specific.
Agreed.
And anything related to digital transformation needs at least, we say 2 to 4 weeks, maybe push that out at least 4 weeks.
Especially like when we help our clients put RFPs out for software, we like to say, 6 to 8 weeks, like 2 months is really
we
great.
leave it out for at least a month and a half.
Yeah,
we do.
Yeah. Because that just gives people time to respond, and you're not getting a templated proposal that's not great. You're getting something that people have spent time on that is hopefully, that is tailored towards you. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. All right. We're moving on to challenge number 3. Real quick, mine's lagging. Can you see that, Lexi?
Yeah, I can. Okay. Yeah.
If you're just now joining us, please make sure, and I don't have it showing on this view, but make sure that you're following us on all social media platforms, because everything that we're talking about today is in written form or is on another video. So check out our YouTube channel. And then when we get finished here, because I didn't put the QR code on this screen, but our 2025 report, I want you guys to go out and download it and let us know what you think, because we are constantly updating that information so that we remain trusted in the space. So please let us know. We want your feedback on that. So, all right, challenge number 3.
Challenge number 3 is lack of communication and clarification opportunities. And, as you can see, this has a funny picture associated with it. What I like to call the cone of silence. Sometimes, this doesn't happen a whole lot, but sometimes there is no way to ask questions. I've even saw where there is no contact in the RFP. Like I have to go do research and find your purchasing director and guess that they'll be looking at this proposal and put them in as, in our cover letter. Sometimes there's no point of contact. There's no portal to ask Q&A. There's no email to reach out to. That they have made it very clear, do not contact us. There are no pre-bid meetings, no portals. We can't see clarification. We can't ask a question if we have it. So this is extremely frustrating, because there's been many times where we've had, well, did you think about this? Or what about this detail? And there is no way to get further clarification. So again, you're getting our best shot in the dark, but without those open communication channels, it's very, very frustrating. And I understand RFPs that say, do not contact anyone regarding this RFP in the city except for XYZ, this person. You're only supposed to contact the point of contact, and you're not going to be calling the mayor to ask him to go out to lunch, for this RFP.
That's right.
Yeah. And that totally makes sense. Conflict of interest. I get all that. But at least have someone that is knowledgeable about the RFP and what the requirements are and what you're looking for, that we can ask questions to.
Yeah. And let's talk about the pre-bid meeting for a second, because we like pre-bid meetings. It gives us a chance to, number one, see who our competitors are. Wink, wink. But number 2, it allows us to hear from you, the client, and what you really meant by your RFP. Now, let me say this. If you are going to host a pre-bid meeting and it's going to be really buttoned up where you're just reading word for word on your RFP and you don't allow us to have open communication, to me, it's not worth it, because I'm not getting anything more than what I got when I read your RFP.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be sassy, but I know it's coming across like that, but I love pre-bid meetings where it's just an open conversation. Like, let's talk about this. What were you meaning by, it takes you 4 weeks to approve an invoice? What were you meaning by your system is on-prem and it's sunsetting next month? Like, whoa, what, I
Let's
love
walk
those
through that.
pre-bid
Yeah.
meetings. And Lexi normally, before Lexi, I used to attend them, but Lexi attends them now.
Mhm.
Lexi, do you have any thoughts on pre-bid meetings?
Yeah. So like Megan said, it is nice when, even if you want to go through your RFP at first, and then leave some time at the end for question and answer, that's awesome. I don't love when, the people will ask questions and they'll say, refer to section 2 in the RFP. Okay, well, I've already read section 2, so that's not a helpful response. And also, a pretty common practice I saw the other day was, we're not sure, submit that in writing. And I get, you may get a one-off question that you're like, oh, I don't really want to answer that live. Like, what if I give the wrong answer? I understand that sometimes happens.
Mm-hmm.
But every question being answered that way to submit in writing, because they're, they don't want to say anything live,
Mm-hmm.
and it be held
Recorded.
against them, and people,
Yeah.
people come back to it. But also, you need to know your project well. You need to be able to answer questions live. You need to have multiple stakeholders on there. You may have a purchasing person or procurement that is, in the weeds on the procurement stuff, but also have a project specific subject matter expert who really helped with the scope of work. You need to have multiple people involved in these meetings, and you don't just need to answer every question with refer to section 2 or submit it on the portal. I get it's nice to have things in writing, but let's make it an open conversation.
Yeah, no, completely agree with that. Do you have examples of some of those questions that they're scared to answer? One thing that comes to mind for me, when I used to do this, what feels like years ago, is a lot of times people will ask specifically about budgeted numbers for the project.
Yes.
And I get exactly why they're asking that. I understand because they don't want to overbid or provide you all with sticker shock, right? But that's one question that I'm like, you need to submit that in right. Like they're scared to admit
They're not,
or maybe they can't. And I agree with that.
Yeah.
They shouldn't.
Yeah.
But are there other examples that you've heard, Lex?
Mostly like when you started this, I thought about the budget one. And I've been on some calls or even in the RFP, they make it very clear our stated budget is X amount.
Yeah.
But to me, that's not really a great practice. I understand you have to budget for projects and you're going to have a budgeted number or a range. But it's not a great practice because you're not getting like true competition. A lot of vendors will work toward that number, whether it makes sense or not. And also your number may be well below what this project scope actually is. And then people may come in at that number and then the project starts going and, we need a change order, right away. They catered toward the budget.
No, that's a great point. Yep.
Yeah. They catered toward the budget and then they quickly want a change order. Prior to working here in my previous job, we saw that happen a lot with construction pre-bid meeting, construction bids. People would come in and they would come in at that number and then they would immediately get awarded. And guess what? Now all this new work has popped up in a change order. So, I think putting your budget out there, you're giving yourself,
you're putting yourself in a corner, kind of.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely.
I really do feel like
a big question they like to shy away from. And I understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Which I think goes back to, it's probably good. I mean, I think it's a good practice to put out an RFI. I really do.
I do too.
Especially if, you need more information on your project. And
exactly. You can say what does the overall cost for these services look like? And you can get ranges from vendors and kind of say, oh, is our budget in line? Or are we going to have to go back for more money? I think that gives you a really good base to work from.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this image of the cone of silence. It is
That's how we feel.
Favorite.
All
right, let's move on to number 4. And then we want to get to some good and bad examples of RFPs. So, this one's my favorite too.
This one's funny too.
We've hit on this, and I feel like we always do.
We're always
passionate about this.
Yes. Complex submission procedures. So this can be anything from excessive requirements on portals to millions of forms that you could just have the awarded vendor fill out on the back end. That would be nice to not, I mean, when we get things notarized, it's a whole process, you know what I mean? Having to go through that. Restrictive formatting. We've talked about this before, page limits where we don't actually get to say what we want to say. And it's really hard to stand out because you're having to explain yourself in 10 pages. That's pretty difficult. And then our favorite would be the snail mail submission. I'm sure going and mailing, and that typically shortens our timeline by 2 days. We've got to get that in the mail 2 days out. Sometimes things are out of our control. Weather, or, it got delivered to the wrong building, although we had the right building wrote on there. Things are out of our control. And, in 2025, especially in a post-COVID world, we should all really have an electronic way to submit proposals. It's just crazy that they still require mailing.
I'm laughing right now because this is a funny story. I'm just going to go ahead and tell it. So anytime that we do videos for you guys, our long form videos, at the end, we try to, let you know to follow us on social media. And for whatever reason, sometimes, I guess because we're tired at the end of the video, and we're like, we can't get that out. And so we just put together a blooper reel that we will be sharing at some time, small commercial, but it's really good. But one of the bloopers, AB trying to get out, like, hey, follow us on social media. And he says, or send us a letter.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's so funny. But you're right. I mean, we did ship a proposal that we felt so good about, and it was time stamped and everything. And the address was what it needed to be, delivered to this department. And guess what? It didn't get delivered to that department. It got delivered to another department. And so I guess they sat on it because it was a day early, time stamped. And anyway, I guess that department sat on it and finally took it to the other department, and they kicked us out. And that is out of our control.
Yeah.
Out of our control. So there's money wasted. I paid multiple people to put that together, and I paid a lot of money to ship that to you.
Yeah.
So, anyway, sorry again, passionate about that. And also, Lexi, let's talk about the one we submitted right before the holiday, that the file was too big for my electronic signature. Y'all probably saw my reel on this because it circulated not too long ago, but I had to print 5 sheets of paper to sign because it was too big to send via Adobe for a signature.
Yes, it was crazy. So Megan had to print it out, sign everything manually. It was too big to send for digital signatures, sign everything by hand. Then there was an issue with scanning it all back because it was so large. And then I had to do it once again, to get things notarized. So it's a whole process. So it's so frustrating. And then guess what? Then I had to print out 3 copies at the end to physically submit. So, I mean, that really took like
a whole day almost.
Yeah, literally a whole day running around doing this.
Because I was over here closing on what felt like a mortgage loan. I mean, it was awful.
The paperwork was crazy.
And it opens us up to mistakes. Like, again, we don't see these forms every day. Some of the forms are very specific. So ensuring that we have every box checked and every line signed, like, that is hard for us to do and worry about too. So some of these forms, which I said in my video, maybe some of these forms can be signed when we're contracting. Do they really need to be signed when we're just submitting a proposal and we haven't even chosen yet? I don't know, guys.
Yeah.
All right. I think we've covered all of our challenges.
We'll hop into looking at examples.
Let's go to examples. So do we want to show bad RFP first?
Sure. Yep. That sounds good.
All right, guys, again, bear with me because this is all new sharing screens in here. So bad RFP example. Lexi, let me know when you can see it. I'm going to zoom in. We good?
Yep, that's good.
Okay. Yeah. So, all right, give us a little bit of background and we'll start scrolling through here.
Yeah. So obviously, as you can tell, this is 3 pages. This is not the whole RFP that was issued. I just cut out where their scope was pretty much, which Their scope is very short. It's only about a page or so. But so this was an interesting one where they didn't really know what they wanted. If you scroll down to the scope of services, Megan, it is kind of all over the place. Selected proposer will work closely with IT project teams to fully understand distinct individual project requirements. So, multiple projects, perhaps, not really sure. Objectives tailored to the project scope. The proposer may offer on-demand advisory services and workshops. So, 1 second we're talking about a project scope, now we're on call. And then they give some bullets of what they're looking for, like requirement gathering, recommendation, implementation support, multiple items like that. And this was actually a unique one where, we did our research on and then things changed to security and compliance, scalability planning. So that seems like, quite different than what we were just talking about with requirement gathering. And then we go to technology trends. We actually went above and beyond and did our research here and saw that they had budgeted for an ERP system in their annual budget. And so we were like, well, their scope's kind of all over the place, but we're going to propose ERP consultant.
Because all of these things too are involved with an ERP.
Yeah,
project.
Especially those first three. We were like, okay, requirements, recommendations, implementation.
Even security and scalability planning, all of these are involved with an ERP project.
Yes. And so we were shortlisted from this entity, and we went there, and this is what I was talking about, where we really just had a conversation with them. And turns out their project was not really ERP consulting. That they really didn't know.
And they asked us too. They said, why did you propose ERP?
Yeah. And we had a good rationale for it. But they truly didn't know what they wanted their work to be. And it was more on-call services than anything. And they even wanted their pricing submitted to be, overall pricing.
Hourly rates.
Yeah. And we ended up just doing hourly rates because we were like, we can't give
budget
you pricing for a whole year because we don't even know how many hours per week we'll be working on this. Like your project's kind of all over the place. So we're just giving hourly rates. So this is one, and this was actually, it's a resolicitation, as you can tell in the title. They had put this out twice. I'm not sure why they had to put it out again. When we first saw it, we thought, oh, well, maybe it's more in depth this time. They've really, got their project together. But it was actually the exact same as the first one. So this was an interesting one where we really just had to get with them on the short list and figure out what they wanted. But this was one where it was just a shot in the dark. I remember when this was QA'd, somebody said, why didn't we do an IT strategic plan? Why didn't we, because it could go either way.
And I think, if I can remember, this is an old one. I think we ended up taking bits and pieces, right?
Yeah.
We ingrained our IT strategic plan with ERP consulting. But the problem with this RFP, specifically in the scope, is it's not outcome based.
No.
You're not giving us what you're looking to achieve, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You could have said, hey, the town is currently on an old antiquated system and we are on-prem and we're looking to procure a new software for finance and HR. And the problem with this procurement is that we're on-prem now and we realize that when we need to go to the cloud, we need to redesign our processes, right? Like that could be your outcome, your paragraph under requirement gathering. Collaborating with IT staff, yes, to understand their business needs goals, but it's also, collaborating with all departments. There are probably some tech department related solutions that need to be discussed only with technology. But anyway, I'm just pointing out that this is very vague. The scope
Yes.
is vague. And so we have a lot of questions.
Yeah, the scope was very vague, and all these things made sense to us and we could do all of these things, but it wasn't really in a cohesive manner. It seemed like separate projects. That they really, we need all these things. It's not really a set standalone project by itself.
Yes. And again, when you put this out to your vendors, we're running around like, okay, is this IT strategic planning or is this ERP? Is it both? Do we put everything that we do in a proposal and overwhelm them when they read it?
Yeah, exactly.
So this one was interesting. But anything else on the bad example, Lex?
I don't think so. Just that, you can tell by the way their scope was about half a page that they did not have nothing in depth looking for their scope. We like a scope that's a bit longer. I don't love 100-page RFPs by any means, but if you're going to go in depth in anything, let's go in depth about the scope, not all these forms.
And again, I don't think that there was a forum or an open Q&A or a pre-bid meeting on this one either. I could be wrong, so don't hold me to that. But we weren't able to gain clarification on these things either. So we weren't able to ask like, hey, what are you looking for? And it was a resolicitation. So I guarantee you the first one that went out, they didn't get many responses.
Yeah.
So they resolicited it.
Yeah.
But I don't know that for a fact. All right, let's go to good RFP example. Can you see my screen? We on the right?
It is still on the other one.
It's still on the other one. Okay, hold on. I think I have to
stop share and
go
then
back. Share again.
I think so too.
Sorry, guys. All right, now can you see it?
Yes.
Is it zoomed in enough? Hold on, let me go back one. All right.
Yeah, go back one. Yeah. This one we really liked because it was set up like, here's our purpose. This is what we're wanting out of this. They're focused on their outcomes. They knew
this right here.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They tell you exactly what they're looking for. They want
beautiful
purposes associated with the assessment, evaluation, procurement, selection, acquisition, and implementation of a software solution. So, and then they even break that down further in a bit.
The county desires to embark on a comprehensive assessment of its systems processes, not only to implement, but also to adopt business process improvements and best practices. So that tells me they care about change management.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is a huge piece of anything digital transformation.
Yeah. And then even going down a little bit, Megan, like we said, we love a background section.
Oh, yeah.
They did great at this. They tell you how many workers, how many citizens, what the departments include, what their budget is. They tell you all this information. Could I have went and searched and found it? Yeah, probably.
Sometimes,
yeah. I'll tell you one that's really hard to nail down. Sometimes you cannot find on the official website how many employees, and multiple things. Google, ChatGPT, different AI, they all say different things. So you may get in the ballpark, but it's really nice to hear from the entity, especially how many employees. And they highlighted the schools was not part of this, which, if the schools were part of it, that's way more people they're serving, way more workers, etc. So it was nice they called that out, that was not related.
So what did we find out? We found out how big the organization is, what departments this project is going to cover, what it leaves out, how many end users, and what their annual budget is.
Yes. They told us a lot in one paragraph.
A lot in two.
That saved us a lot of time, not having to,
right here,
to look into all that. And it comes from the entity, so it's correct. But that was extremely helpful. Again, on the background, they say primary software applications used, and they give you a breakdown by module. We knew exactly what they're currently on. Been in place since the early 1990s. wow, 30 years ago. So we knew they needed improvement, and we knew what they were currently working with. And that told us the struggles they were going on with. And those last two paragraphs tell you different softwares, again, for multiple different things. So that told us, they didn't have one kind of overall ERP. They had multiple things going on for multiple different departments.
Yep. So this tells me that they have a lot of integrations and that they're probably working on a command-based system. So this tells me before I even start crafting a response, where my budget number needs to be, how much work this is going to require from my delivery team, right? I know that these processes are going to have to be mapped out because going from 1990s to the 21st century, like huge gap there.
Huge jump. Right? Yep.
And I also know now how many departments are involved and what's not involved. So I know the breadth and depth of this project and how to allocate hours and how to resource those. And we're on page 2.
Exactly. We know tons of info from this RFP, literally on page 2. They continue to give us
more
about
GIS.
Paper-based manual procedures. They have to use Excel, Word, QuickBooks, workarounds, shadow systems. They gave us all this info that we didn't have to guess about, which was awesome. Like, we knew up front, okay, they're very paper-based. Their systems aren't working that well for them. They're super outdated. They need something up to date and for everything to, be online.
Right.
And then if you'll go down a bit further, Megan, to the scope of services, they actually broke it up by phase, exactly what they were looking for. And when they do this, there's times where if we don't feel like they've covered everything, we will add more in and say, this is also recommended. But they really hit all their bases. They had everything covered, truly, from beginning to end, what needed to be done. They broke it up into multiple, A, B, C, D. They had to develop the RFP, vendor evaluation, negotiation, contract, then implementation, project oversight. I mean, you could tell this entity really did their research on the front end, and they knew the project they were going out to RFP for.
Yep.
Yeah. They really knew. And this is kind of a, pristine example of the pre-work you need to do to have a good RFP like this.
And I want to say this. I think sometimes you could overcomplicate it, right? This is very simplistic. Yes. I understand what direction you want to go. I understand, again, your holistic view of what you're trying to achieve. And I understand that you understand the steps it's going to take to get there, right? And this allows us to organize our response via your phases and what you're saying.
How you want to break it up.
And how you want to break it up. And so this is just, it's beautiful. And again, we're only on page 3, right, of the entire document. So now we did just cut out some of the pages, but this is the first 4 pages of their solicitation.
Yes.
So,
and this was not a long solicitation. I think this was maybe 10 to 12 pages max. They didn't burden you with all these required forms and all this, look at this sample agreement and XYZ. They really focused on the project. It was concise, but I got all the info I needed from this.
I love that they put this in here because I don't see this a lot. And so that, again, told me that this is the ideal client that I want to work with, right? And I know what they're looking for, and they value change, right? They just may not know how to get there. I like this piece, the functional areas, because even though you told me the departments involved, sometimes we don't really understand what modules need to be involved when you're procuring a software. So I love that they broke that down. Because, I mean, we just responded to one that said, hey, we're going to do everything but HCM, so that changes things a little bit. Again, they're just breaking down their modules, in my opinion, here. And also, this tells me that they may be open to
other
best of breed. solutions because they're already
using a lot of
operating that way.
Yeah.
But, you know, I want to give them the option that we will look at, you know, best of breed.
Both.
We give this to every client, but still, I know I can put that in my response.
Yeah.
Now, here we go. The only downfall
wasn't mail-in. Yeah, that was the downfall. But you know, it's doable. It's just not preferred.
It's not. It's not. And this right here terrifies me, guys.
Yeah.
Anybody could put anything on a USB flash drive, and you may not know it until after it's plugged into your computer. You wouldn't know it until it's plugged into your computer. So why not say 6 hard copies and email me a copy?
Email. Yeah.
Yeah. That's okay. I'm preaching to the choir, but just be mindful of the USB flash drives. That's been an ongoing issue because that can be a huge threat to your entire organization.
Yeah.
All right. Are we good on the good example?
Yes.
I think so I think key takeaways here is, you know, you give us a great background within the span of 2 paragraphs, right? You don't have to overcomplicate what you're looking to achieve.
Yes.
Tell us your background of your county. How big is it? How many employees do you have? So that we know how to resource. How big is this project going to be? And are we going to need to include process mapping? Or do we just need to do a current state discovery? For this one, we needed to include process mapping because you're going from 1990 to 2025 potentially, right? So huge gap there. They're on-prem, there's antiquated systems, there's multiple systems. And I knew that within the first 2 pages.
Exactly.
You know, and I know that they're using workarounds. I know that they're using Excel. I know that probably one person in finance has access to this Excel worksheet and they're having to, you know, send multiple versions to multiple different people. So I know that there's a lot of groundwork. So I know how to price it. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. You'll get better responses the more info you give.
That's right. What else is a takeaway from here? Did we cover all of them?
Yeah, I think we've covered it all. Just really, you know, nailing down what your scope of services is and giving us a solid background is super helpful.
Yes. Kyler said, did Avero Advisors write this one? No, this is one we found in RFP land that came to us. And we were like, oh, this is beautiful. And all of them be like this. This is great. And we've been trying to figure out a way to share it with you all. We talk about it all the time, but we learned how our little streaming platform worked this morning. So we're glad to be able to share. We have somebody who's looking for more insights or finance RFP. Hassan, if I said that wrong, I'm so sorry. But please message Lexi or I or both of us together. We can definitely help you with that. Kyler says, one of my favorite Megan Seaton posts about canceling paper submission. I was upset that day. There was a lot going on. Lexi said she wanted to jump off a bridge, and that made me really sad. And it was just bad. I was the only one in the office kicking our brand new, nice, shiny, what am I saying? Printer, fax, scanner. And I was like kicking it because it was telling me I needed a passcode to get in. And so anyway, it was a whole thing. I was upset. And I was like, I need to get this raw content real quick. Let's share one more thing because we talked about these big paper submissions and all of the forms that you guys require us to do. We see this across the board that RFP will provide a checklist, right? And it's so beneficial. It helps us stay organized. It helps you all stay organized, right? So I'm going to share that really quick and we're going to wrap up. We've been talking for an hour.
I know. Over an hour.
You guys tired of us yet? All right, let me zoom in so you can see. Can you see?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So this is just one page, a checklist, but I will tell you the background of this RFP. It was about 125 pages long, I think, which is super long for an RFP. And there were multiple, I guess, forms or, form of contracts, sample this, sample that they had in this, that are just like exhibits. They're just samples. You don't have to sign them at this time. That's just telling you what the contract will look like. That those are things that will be executed on the back end. So in an RFP, especially large ones, it's super nice to have this checklist to know exactly, proposal letters, certifications, subcontractors, conflict of interest, insurance, COIs. It told us what we needed to turn in, disclosure of contributions. It told me what forms, not what forms mattered and which ones didn't, but which ones needed to be executed at this time and which ones were exhibits. And this was even super helpful because this one was actually due right around the time I was having eye surgery. So I actually had someone else compile this proposal and fill out the forms. And he was very cautious and concerned. And he said, well, what about this form? And what about this form? And I said, go to page, 6. There's your checklist. If it's not on the checklist, you're good. It's not a form we have to fill out at this time. So that was extremely helpful. I mean, these are helpful for me, yet alone a new person doing these. And so that really told us, here's what you need. The other things are just exhibits to look at, but they are not needed to return in at this time. And that really shrinks the RFP a lot into a manageable amount I can focus on.
Yep. Absolutely. I love a good checklist, especially that they reference this. I've seen them too, where they've hyperlinked it. And so you can jump in the document to get to that form instead of scrolling through 100 pages to try to find, the form that I need to sign. So, no, this is great. I love an RFP checklist. It's just a good way to hold, people accountable, both on our side, the vendor side, and your all side as clients. Definitely. You can say, hey, there was a checklist. You were supposed to sign, this proposal letter and you didn't. And it was clearly defined in the checklist and in the RFP document. So you're right. It's just a good way to hold people accountable.
Yes, definitely. And it's a good way for us to make sure we're not missing anything and you're not coming back to us. And it's a good way to, that we saw where if you miss a form, disqualified on things at that large of a scale, it's super easy for people to miss a form. If you give them a checklist, that kind of assures you're seeing that they have checked off all the forms are there and they know which forms needed to be there.
It's just a more efficient process. Going back to that 85-page response that we all had to print out. I mean, Lexi had to go through, number one, and merge all the forms together with our proposal. Number two, she had to spend time on telling me which page numbers definitely needed to be signed, right? And so that in itself probably takes an hour of her time, maybe longer. I don't know. And then it takes us another hour to print out the pages.
Yes.
Took us another hour to figure out we couldn't send the file before we even printed out the
paper. We couldn't use the scanner.
And we're like, is it us? Is it user error? Or what's happening? So anyway, I will get off that for now. But thank you guys for joining us today. Lexi, let me let you wrap up. Sorry.
So I'm not really sure exactly how to wrap up, but we hope you have found this session informative. It's really been our first, I feel like, hands-on session where we have showcased things. And I hope you found that very helpful and that, you can use these tips in the future when you're putting out an RFP, evaluating an RFP. I think, keep watching these videos and look at our resources online. You're going to see we have lots of helpful tips to look at prior to issuing an RFP to make sure you get the best responses.
Yes, absolutely. And make sure you download our 2025 report. All of this that we talked about today is in that report. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think about our lives. What can we do better? We're always looking for feedback from you all. We want to know what works well, what doesn't, what you guys find useful. So make sure you follow us on all of our social media platforms. Check out our YouTube channel. And look for us at your conferences this year. I'm super excited. I've been on conference planning a little bit this week. So we are going to GFOA this summer, and we will be at ICMA in the fall, and we will be at NARO, we know for a fact, which is the National Housing Authority conference that's this fall as well. So if you're going to a conference that you don't see us at, let us know which conference you're going to. We'd love to attend and meet you.
Yeah.
So
We'd love to check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Lex, you did a phenomenal job. What do you guys think?
Thank you.
I think I'm going to let Lexi lead these from now on. I think I'm fired. So thank you guys so much. And I hope you have a great end to your week. We'll see you guys soon.
Thank you all.